Hi, this is DrumWise Meets. Today I'm with a drummer who's a founding member of Sly and the Family Stone, and he's also worked with artists such as Weather Report, David Bowie and Carlos Santana. This is DrumWise Meets Greg Errico. Hi Greg.
Hey Tom, how you doing?
My first question for you today, Greg, what age did you get into drums, and when you first started playing, what bands or artists inspired you?
I was 14 when I got my first drum set. I was interested in the drums much before that, but I hadn't taken any lessons and I didn't have a set. And so I was 14. And one of my first inspirations was Buddy Rich. And I used to love listening to records with all kinds of, all different kinds of music. And so I was always, drawn to music with a lot of drums in it. And I just had a natural interest in it. Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah.
And when you first started, so what was your first drum set that you had?
I had a Ludwig set. That was the first one I bought. It was a very basic fundamental kit. And yeah, it was Ludwig.
And do you happen to still have it?
No, no, I don't. I got some of the early original snare drum still.
Oh, right.
That I had back then, and that I played on all the records. But the kit, that particular kit, I don't have, unfortunately. Yeah.
And while we're going down the equipment route, obviously I see some very nice stuff behind you. What's your current setup? What do you prefer to use these days?
I've been with DW for a couple of decades now. I knew John Good when he first went with them, and they started developing, which came from Drum Workshop came from, it was Camco line they had bought, and so they took that concept and the mindset and the ideals of the whole thing and developed and turned it Drum Workshop DW. Yeah. So I've been with him for a long time. Yeah.
What's the kit over your right shoulder?
That's this is relatively new. It's a DW kit. It's actually PDP is there, like, kind of, it's an entry level Pacific drum. We call it Pacific line, and it's made by DW. But this is a wooden hoop kit, and I kind of dug it, and so they sent me one, and it's all wooden hoops. It's like retro stuff, like early, when they used to make wooden hoops.
Yeah, it looks cool. Nice. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, awesome.
I like it.
So, on to a question that quite a few people have found tough. And, I would find this hard to answer myself. But, I'm not here to make your life easy, Greg. So, if you had to pick just one, who would be your all-time favorite drummer?
Well, yeah, that is a tough one. I mean, especially like early on, it would have been, like I could have said, well, Buddy Rich, because he was like one of the first inspirations. And, he was outspoken. He had bigger than life personality, and his performances playing was as such. And then since, especially nowadays, there's so many just phenomenal young drummers, new ideas, fresh approaches, and just relentless, fearless approach to the drums. And so the one I'll make it easy. Buddy Rich. I
You
mean,
might.
I could say, there's a whole list of guys that are, inspirational, and I'd say, wow, and check it out. And daily that, I mean, Dennis Chambers sends me stuff all the time. And, like, check this guy out, and, it's young cats, new
Mm,
cats, and just the techniques and the approaches and things. Like, I'm watching this one guy's hand the other day, and it just looked like it was unreal. It was like, almost like animation.
mm.
This was a technique that he had. And I told Dennis I'd never seen anybody do stuff like that before. Or,
And you've actually answered that question perfectly, believe it or not, because the kind of the reason I made that question up is I've got it written down on my iPad here, about we evolve as drummers, as we get older and we take on different influences.
yeah,
So what you've said there is perfect, because who we were inspired by when we first started playing.
yeah.
Obviously, that they have a special place in our heart, don't they? But then, yeah, as every day goes by, we see new people and we get inspired by others. So you've mentioned, obviously, there's a long list. So who else has really inspired you?
Uh, who else has inspired me at an early age, or like,
Just just in general, your biggest, let's say, drumming inspirations rather than, in general. But yeah, what other drummers have really inspired you over your
I
career?
mean, like, for instance, I was talking about the Stick People, that thing. There were 5 drummers from the Bay Area that are doing now. I mean, they were all inspirational. Lenny White, David Garibaldi, Mike Clark, Michael Shreve. And we came up together at the same time. And so, like, David opens the thing with the Stick People, saying that we all grew up together, listening to each other, but having our own thing, not sounding like each other. And of course, there's many other drummers that I heard that, I'm checking out. Someone that, um, a performer, or a drummer in this case, that's playing, and they, let me turn this on mute. They inspire you. You hear something, they like to catch your attention. Anything that's good out of that, that's new for you and refreshing and inspirational, you're gonna take, and you're gonna make it your own. It's gonna be part of your conversation or your language, and you'll own it, or you should anyway. And take something that's inspiring, and develop it. Gravitate to it and make it your own,
Yeah,
and say something with it.
excellent.
Um, yeah.
That's why I say it's a hard question, because yeah, picking one, I would struggle. And
Well,
on
it
to another
is.
question that again other people have struggled with a little bit. So, what's been the highlight of your career so far?
Gee, um, the highlight in performance, you mean, or just my own inspiration? And
Just
I
yeah,
mean,
anything.
I'm feel blessed to be able to have the music that we created back then to still be relevant, and that I could still join in and perform it with, uh, different people, and that I'm able to do it. I mean, that that's exciting in itself. And like I said, I feel that I'm blessed to be able to do it. And as time goes on, playing is a physical challenge too. So as you get older, your facilities change, and it's more of a challenge to keep up to that level of doing what you did or what you're going to do now, and keep it at a high level, in an energy, uh, you know, at a level of energy that lifts people
Mm,
and gets
yeah.
them excited and gets them inspired also. So I might have drifted away from your original question.
No, that's great. And what you just said then made me really think that I've not done a gig now for over a year, and my main gig is it's a theatre tribute to Deep Purple and Led Zeppelin. The first half is
Oh,
Deep Purple, second half is Led Zeppelin. It's called
honor.
Purple
Yeah.
Zeppelin, but it's a like 2 hour 15-minute show. So when I go back to that, Yeah, like I'm gonna need to really get myself
You're
back
gonna
in
have to
shape.
woodshed for a month,
Yeah,
especially,
it's
you know,
it's it's hard work.
yeah, you can't just lay back and perform that. You gotta dig deep.
So, on to a question that can be either about brain fails or gear fails. Have you ever had anything go wrong on stage that you've had to recover from that you're happy to tell us about?
Those are probably some of the best moments that have happened, or some of the most intriguing or inspiring things probably came out of moments like that where it was a mistake, and it's what you do with it that makes it important or not, or meaningful or not. You know, I don't have anything. Nothing comes to mind other than just the general thought that's happened a lot.
Mm,
Make no bones about it.
mm.
But I don't have any particular thing that comes that I could
No,
recall.
that's cool, but what you said there is really interesting because this is something I'm talking to sort of young drummers about quite a
Yeah.
lot. You know, that when you make a mistake or something goes wrong, it's really important to be able to keep going and not be phased by it. You know, if even down to, when I've got students that it's their first ever gig or whatever and they drop a stick, it's just like to them, it's the end of the world. But you say, well, look at all these guys, these pro guys. Look, he's dropped a stick right there. He's playing, on main stage Glastonbury or whatever. You just have to just it's part of it, isn't it? Being able to just keep
I,
going.
I might have dropped one when I was at Glastonbury, actually. But,
Oh,
I mean,
was it
that's
you?
happened. That's happened. But the whole thing is you don't let that stop the show or what you're doing, or you have to do something with it, and you have to do, you know, that's the whole thing with live music, and the chemistry amongst a group of people that's a constant thing.
Mm.
Everybody, you're bouncing off of each other, you're playing to each other, you're commenting and answering, and it's what you do in those moments that make a great performance or not, I think. you know
That's a great answer. I love that.
yeah.
Excellent. Yeah, good stuff. And something that sticks in my mind, just to tell you, I have a gong behind me, obviously, for the Bonham, and it wasn't it wasn't quite on the riser, and I hit it at the end of Whole Lot of Love,
You knocked it
and
off.
I hit it I think 4 or 5 times, and I hit it once, and I saw it start to move. And I went to do another swing and I was like, oh dear. And it fell straight off the riser, this massive gong. And I'm sat there with my massive mallet and I'm like, well, now what do I do? So I started it. Oh, it's brilliant. It was one of those moments.
Uh-huh.
So, um, on to a question, putting my drum teacher hat on here. When you first get a gig with a new artist, whatever the gig, whenever you've had some new material to learn, how do you learn the material? Because, everyone learns stuff differently. There seems to be a way that most people learn, but do you just listen by ear? Do you transcribe? Or does it happen very often that someone says, here you go, Greg, here's the entire folder of the whole show written out in drum music for you to read. Here you are. How does it work for you?
Well, I could eliminate a couple of those things real quick because I don't read. And so, so if you hand me a folder of the show sheet music, then you can do me. So it's all from ear and from real time. Like when I went out with the weather report, quite honestly, I had been jamming with Miroslav at my house for a month or two before, but we weren't doing weather report music. And before I had met him, I had heard of the group, and but I wasn't familiar with their music yet. Okay,
Hmm.
and when Joe and asked me to do the tour, well, Miroslav had told me first. Then I talked to Joe, and they asked me to come out and do a tour. I wasn't that familiar with the music, and I went back to New York. We'd spent a day or two mostly hanging out, not even a lot of playing. And it was just a matter of, with their music, I mean, it was a lot of improvisation and just, it was more like the rehearsals were, here's the intro, here's how we get into the tune, here's how we get out of it. And if there was happened to be some kind of a break or something that was significant in the middle, you know, that was identified too. And everything else was real time. You did it in real time. And kind of like even our sets with Sly, we rehearsed a lot, the music, the arrangements, and so on and so forth. But our performances, that stuff went out the window. We always it was constantly evolving, and morphing performance as far as what we did. It would, and I think that's what makes it interesting. So not that uh, a drummer's going to sit behind, a big band, and you got your charts and everything. You could treat charts in the same way. It's how you interpret the charts and what you do in real time with those performances. But that's more structured, and you got 18 people sometimes, and so there's more considerations for, this is absolute, this is going to be here, 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 and but in between all that, there's room for interpretation and pushing the chart, with everybody, and all those personalities, I think, come into play to make good performances.
So I've now got a couple of curveball questions for you here. And the first one of those is, what are your hobbies away from drums?
Um, I I ride bike a lot to keep in shape and just, to get out and fresh air and get out in the world. And I got an electric bike now, so I go further and actually get more exercise, even though it's electric, because I spend more time. I like traveling and I like exploring. Like I said, I've raised 5 kids. I've got 3 grandkids, so you know, I'm always busy with something. Uh, you know, I don't uh, I don't do sports particularly. Uh, I go to sports occasionally, different things, different games and stuff. But so those things, and having a family, and uh, keep me pretty busy.
Mm. And
Yeah.
again, the reason for that question, just to explain myself with these slightly random questions sometimes, is when I first came up with that question, it's because I still think that just because drums are our livelihood doesn't mean that they can't still be our hobby. It's just that we're fortunate enough to have been able to make a career out of drums. But for me, very much, I
Yeah.
still love everything drums as a hobby, even though it pays the bills.
Well, and for me, it wasn't paying the bills at first. I mean, then I got into it, I guess you could say, a hobby, or I just had passion for it. I loved it. I loved the sound. I loved doing it. And so, I still have that. Um, and it's brought me other opportunities too, like music production and even writing. I've had opportunities to do that because of playing the drums, not the other way around. So, I had a studio for some years, with some other people. And, so I used to spend a lot of time in it and you do a lot of experimenting, recording, because it's yours. So, you're not on the clock writing a check for every hour you're
Mm.
there, right? And, so uh, music in general, I guess, has definitely been a hobby in all the different components to it, that I've been able to get involved in. And
Mm.
I guess you could call
Excellent.
it a hobby too. I mean, I look at it, I think I've been blessed enough to where I could approach it, and I try to keep it on a level to it remains more of a passion and a hobby than I have to. I try to stay away from I have to,
Mm.
bec- you know,
Yeah.
and it's more fun that way.
Now, on to my last curveball question here. the most important question of the whole interview, the one that has got everybody talking over these last however many interviews I've done, a lot since last March. So, what's your favorite cookie?
Chocolate chip.
Easy.
Did I hear that right? What's your favorite cookie?
Yeah. I have to make sure, obviously, with you guys in the US, I have to make sure I say cookie rather than biscuit, because obviously, as far as I'm aware, that's a whole different thing for you.
So, what do you find that most guys say? What's the answer?
Well, it really depends on where the person is in the world. It really, really does. I mean, the UK guys, we're really into our hobnobs and our custard creams and, all that stuff. Whereas, yeah, the US guys I've spoken to, yeah, it's chocolate chip cookie or it's oatmeal raisin. I think there's been some like peanut butter sort of cookie things that people have liked. Oreos, yeah, that kind of thing. But the second part to that question is, so with your chocolate chip cookie, would you dunk it?
Yeah, I have. I probably used to do it more than, I have. I would dunk it.
Into what? Are we talking tea, coffee?
Coffee.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's easy.
Not milk? Is that like a kid thing to dunk it into milk?
I guess if I think back, I used to probably dunk it in the milk. Yeah. But, the only thing that comes to mind now is coffee.
Nice. Yeah, see, you weren't expecting me to ask that question, were you? So, on to my final question, back to serious drum questions again. And I've changed this question recently, just to keep it fresh, because it's, yeah, I thought this was a nice way of changing this question. So, if you could give just one bit of advice to your younger self when you first started out learning the drums, what would that advice be?
That's a good question. To my younger self, um, maybe, honestly, the first thing that just comes to mind is I probably would have said, go ahead and learn how to read notation, and thinking about it, even back in the early days, there were times where I said, I should do that. There's some opportunities and that are kind of missing, and there's been time periods where it was definitely like, I could have worked maybe where I wasn't. Had I could see that there was a lot of opportunities, and it's a good thing. And I don't have no regrets necessarily, but just to answer your question straightforward, that would be it. Yeah.
Excellent. Yeah. And my original question, which I changed that one to, if you could just give one bit of advice to just an up and coming drummer, someone that's just starting out with drums that's not you, what would that bit of advice be?
Oh, follow your passion and your desires in as far as performing and things that come to your mind. Don't ever say, oh, I can't do that. And it just makes me reflect back to the early days. I was really fortunate to be in a situation where that very mindset was highly supported. And, I had just was nothing but, and being, especially back then, middle 60s, early to middle 60s, in the very beginning, a lot of things I did, I didn't know any better. So, I just fearlessly approached them and did them. And that's part of my DNA. That's part of what made me do the things that I did back then. So, yeah, follow your inspirations and your passions, and you can't go wrong.
So, Greg, thank you so much for spending your time with us here at DrumWise today. It really has been an absolute pleasure talking with you.
My pleasure, Tom. Thanks for having me. I enjoyed the show.